Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show!
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
36-yard line of Phillies, shotgun snap to Hurts, dropping back, only one person rushing, Hurts looking, standing still, winding up, long pass, it lands at the 20, no one is there, zeros on the clock, it's over, the Chiefs have won, Super Bowl 57 on a game-winning field goal, trailing at 10. At the halftime stop, 24-14, they go on to win 38-35. What a game.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting here with me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. You know, it's crazy. We were talking before the show. It's middle of April already.
I know, April 16th to be precise, episode 377 of the show. We've had a couple great shows back to back.
Yeah.
About a month ago,
we were a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. About a month ago, we were joined by Chad Henne, former NFL quarterback, two-time Super Bowl champion, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback that people really enjoyed that show, and we're glad people tuned in for that and have watched it after the fact. And we knew it would be a very popular episode, but we're glad that people enjoyed it. And then 2 weeks ago, we were joined by our 2022 bracket champ. Andy Hoffert won our tournament challenge for March Madness a year ago. We're already now in debt to our winner from 2023, which is Wilson assistant basketball coach Kevin Quimby, also a local businessman. We will reach out to him, getting him his show shirt and getting him booked on the show. He should have I'm sure he can come up with a great topic for us to talk about. If he wants to join us, that's up to him. He doesn't have to, but that is part of the benefit of winning the challenge. So I did find a picture that popped up recently in my time hop of our past bracket challenge winners.
Oh, gosh.
And your wife was on there, which I couldn't recall. She must have passed on the opportunity to join us.
I don't know. She feels like she was...
Was she slighted?
Yeah, she feels like she was slighted, but...
Well, yes, obviously my sister won at the beginning. Our dads won together in the same year. Then back-to-back years, a buddy I played football with, Ryan Yanchosik, had won. I believe I got him his shirt, and he is now local. So if he would like to join us 7-8 years after the fact when he won back-to-back.
Cashing in. The only thing the topic has to be from 7 or 8 years ago.
Right, yeah. We have to kind of like reverse crystal ball it. And then my aunt actually won 2 out of 3 years. Aunt Steph won when she took Villanova all the way both years that they came out on top.
NBA playoffs have been peppered with Villanova guys lately.
Hey,
seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, you love to see it. So I'm not going to spend much more time talking here, mostly because I've got to get up to the television to continue our NCAA 14 Dynasty Year 4 with the FAU Owls. So we're going to talk a bunch of random quick hits tonight. That's what we're calling it, kind of a potpourri, which we've done in the past. And we're going to start. Let's start with the Phillies, because our second topic, where we go back into Penn State, kind of piggybacking off of our discussion with Andy Hoffert 2 weeks ago, which we got great feedback from as well. They really loved Andy. They really loved the topic. They really loved our conversation. We have 2 comments that I didn't see 2 weeks ago from my dad and my uncle Dennis that we're going to talk about when we get to Penn State blue-white and recruiting and all that good stuff. So let's start with the Phillies' slow start, Justin. I'm going to transition over to the game, and I'm going to let you lead the way now, begin our discussion of what's going on with the Phillies.
Yeah, there's a few things going on. One is like, and this is one of those old like baseball cliches, is that it's not necessarily how many hits you have, it's when you get them. And honestly, up until like today, they had been really struggling with their ability to get hits with runners in scoring position. Even in some of their wins, that was a big struggle. They leave a lot of guys stranded on base. However, like today, they were able to like keep getting hits, and hits at the right time are really important. They also have been struggling with some of their starting pitching. Starting pitching hasn't been able to go deep in the games, which puts a strain on the bullpen. And so it's just kind of been a mess.
FYI, Justin, we are playing UTEP.
Okay. But like one of the things is like when they were, this is a few days ago, they were 4-8 with a -22 run differential.
That's not going to get it done.
Not good. But somebody was like, you know when the last time they were 4-8 with a -22 run differential was?
2008.
I think last year.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Last year?
Yes. So like. Yeah, and again, the run differential gets really distorted this early in the season. Like today's game, for example, they're going to be +9 for today. Like, so they might cut that run differential.
11, weren't they?
They might have been. I forget.
14-3.
You're right. So. You're right. It ended up being 14-3. Like, so you just if they can hang right around 500, because in reality they're 4 games under 500, which early in the season is a bunch of games, but like. If they can hang around 500 and then start to get pieces back. Ranger Suarez is going to be pitching like some game simulated games, right? So that's good. His progress has been good. The news, while further down in the rehab like schedule, Andrew Painter has started throwing. I don't think he's been pitching, but he's been throwing and he's been pain-free, which is good signs. So those things in terms of helping the starting pitching come around. Aaron Nola looked better today.
Until the 4th.
Yes, but then he got through and went 6.
Yeah, you're right.
And if Bohm makes the play at first, which again he's transitioning over there, but if Bohm makes the play at first, that inning doesn't unfold like that. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
But true. Yes, there are issues with Nola in that 4th inning. But he looked much better today, and I know they were like, they got a big lead. Why wouldn't you leave him out there for the 7th? His pitch count is good. Why? Because you need him to get out there on a positive note. Like through 6, you can put some of the bullpen guys in low leverage situations. Yeah, that was a big hit.
I just got lit up.
And you can take Nola out and it still be positive. If he goes back out there for the 7th and needs to get pulled in the 7th, then it just seems like, he struggled again. You know what I mean? So like. Pull him out too early in that situation is perfectly fine.
So quickly before you continue, today, this is related to the Phillies and you. So we had just gotten home, I told you, from Natalie's soccer game.
Yes.
And, oh gosh, that was dangerous. And I was upstairs when you texted me, and I tried to clarify with you. Are you being sarcastic?
Right.
Because I wasn't sure if what was happening
good
was
first
good
inning.
Or not. And because, how we discuss things, it could be either.
Yes.
But then when you were like, no, it's good, and you told me what the score was, I was like, Natalie, Uncle Justin says you need to go down and put the Phillies game on. And she went down and she came up and she's like, did you know? I was like, yeah, he told me.
So like that's funny because
oh my gosh, he dropped it.
Austin looked at the score and like did a double take. He's like, wait, the first inning? I'm like, yes.
You're up. Yeah. So I didn't get any points there. It started out really strong, but kind of faded, unfortunately. So yeah, the Phillies have been frustrating. What are they? 5-9?
6-10.
6-10. Okay. 6-10, not great. They have these weird games where they look like the team we thought they were going to be this year, and switching again.
Yeah, like I agree. They've been frustrating at times, but it's so early. We're only in the middle of April. I was talking to my dad. My dad's like, I just want them to get to 500 at the end of April, and I'm like, that would be great. Like if they could be 500 end of April, I'd take that.
I said to you yesterday 2 days ago after their win, I said just go 6-4 the rest of the year.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound great, but guess what? 6-4 at the end of the year will get you places.
Right. Exactly. And that's not far off from the where I say just win 2 out of 3. You win 2 out of 3. you end up in a really good spot. And so it's just while I'm not thrilled about the beginning, I'm not like super concerned yet. We'll see. What I loved today was that they scored 9 in the first. And how many times have we seen, maybe not 9 in the first from the Phillies, but like 5 or 6 or 7, and then they win the game like 7-6, you know? No, like they kept adding on. They scored 9 in the first, and they scored 5 more, but I'm not sure they scored more than 1 or 2 in any other inning.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like one
here
here and one there. Like, and they just kept getting hits and kept getting hits.
Times to getting more too.
Right, exactly.
Jake Cave almost hit another home run near the end of the game.
How about Trey Turner having 2 infield singles in the same inning?
Yeah. Well,
and I think he broke 3 bats. His first 3 at bats, I think he broke his bat today.
I know people are frustrated with the slow start, but like we said, it's a long season.
Yeah.
And I also feel like, and I've been guilty of this too, thinking, man, I really thought Trey Turner would be better. And then they flash his stats up there.
I know.
I'm like, what am I talking about?
I know. He's been really good. And Stott has been really good. You know, like he is showing that it's been really important and really big that he's an everyday guy.
Has he hit in every game?
He has 16. He led off with a home run today. And then he also had a great play, I think maybe in that 4th inning. He had a great play in the field behind second base. So like it's exciting seeing some of the young guys come up.
Yeah, Holmes looked really good.
Oh, and
Stott,
so like
Turner.
we talked about the pitchers, you know, hopefully you should get Ranger back at some point. We would love to get Painter in there somewhere, but don't rush him. And then, you're going to add Bryce Harper back into the lineup at some point here.
Right.
So like, that's awesome. I love seeing Nick Castellanos hitting the ball.
Yeah.
You know, like
I'd say the unfortunate offensive disappointments this year have been Schwarber and Realmuto.
Yeah. Schwarber will come around though. If like you remember last year, it took him a while for the numbers to kind of even out, but like he got there, and Realmuto has been struggling. But I also remember he struggled the first third of last season too, and then he just came on fire. And he didn't play yesterday in the loss, but he played on Friday and today, and he played pretty well at the plate in both those games.
Right, and honestly, I need him more for controlling the pitchers, being a good defensive catcher.
Yeah.
Like, that's more important to me than offense.
Right.
With the way that the Phillies are created, he doesn't have to carry the team that way.
Yeah, exactly. Especially this year's Phillies, you know. So, while it's not the ideal start, I'm not overly concerned, and I'm confident that they'll be okay.
Yeah. So I know people are freaking out. I have been, friend of the show and often a contributor here. He hasn't been on it a bit, so we'll have to get him back on. But Paul Roberts, who I think could be a closet Yankees fan. I don't know that he puts his fandom out there, but I just, from the way that I can read him, and I don't know that we've ever asked him, I feel like he's a Yankees guy. So I could be wrong there. Maybe he's a Phillies guy.
That's going out on a limb, because I feel like calling somebody a Yankees fan, if they're not a Yankees fan, is a big risk.
Well, I honestly don't know if he would ever admit to being a fan of anyone, because he's your typical sports journalist, sports broadcaster.
I feel like where we would get him most likely to, like, I don't want to say admit, but like commit to something would be like professional. But even there, he'd probably tell us like who he used to root for. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
true.
But I mean, he definitely likes to stick it to Philly fans. In particular, the Phillies fans.
Yes.
I don't see it as much with the Eagles, because I feel like he trends like in sort of a supportive way towards the Eagles. But I feel like for the Phillies, it's not. A lot of, like today, he was posting about, what was it, over-under, was 88.5, and people were talking about how people thought they were crazy that they had him under 90.
Right. I wanted to reply. I wanted to be like, did you take the under? Like,
yeah, right. Yeah, that's because he loves his sports betting.
Right,
And
right.
we love to talk to him about it when we do have him on the show. We'll have to have him on again soon. But I only bring this up because I have been screenshotting and saving all of these things that he said negatively about the Phillies, because I just want so badly to respond to that tweet 5 months from now.
You're gonna have a freezing. You want to have freezing.
Right, I'm hoping
freezing cold take.
for old takes exposed,
Yes.
freezing cold takes. But it's all in fun because we love Paul. But I just, I'm defensive of my teams, but I won't come out and say anything now because I don't want to look silly.
Right, because
if it goes poorly.
Right, because honestly, what can I say right now? That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, they haven't been good. They're 6-10.
Right.
I would like if that was flipped, I'd be ecstatic. If they were 10-6 right now, I'd be so thrilled.
Yes.
But they're not. But hopefully they can dig themselves out of the hole they've created for themselves, and we'll see. So, whatever. But I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the Phillies' start to the year?
No. Hopefully they can get some of these guys back that are injured, and I'm hopeful that as that happens, they can really kick it into the next gear. But they're off to Chicago to play the White Sox, who I picked to win the AL Central. I don't know that they will, obviously, but some tough games there. But they come home and play 4 against Colorado. Colorado's bad. So
how crazy is that? We're done with the Reds.
Yeah.
Like the way that the schedule sets out, that's really wacky.
Here's an underrated thing. Like, and who knows? It may not play out exactly like last year, but we played those division teams less this year. We played the Braves and Mets less this year. The combined probably, I think it's something crazy. Like it might be 6 games less for each one or something like that.
Yeah.
That's 12 games against playoff teams. Now I know technically you could pick up, other ones against playoff teams, but like when you're talking about 2 division teams, you're probably not picking up 12 games against playoff teams outside of that. So, that could be a big factor if you're talking like a game or 2 here and there across the course. And you and I both picked them as like wild card style, so that could be big.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll certainly be interesting. All right. Well, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about the Phillies so far. I'm happy with. I'm not happy with it. I'm glad things are going a little bit better, but there's obviously a lot of work to be done. But a lot of that can be overcome with the return of some of the guys that have been beat up or injured. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right.
Gosh.
Well, I'm going to pull up here while you try to finish this drive, Justin. I'm going to pull up our first question as it relates to Penn State stuff. We'll dive into blue and white talk, blue-white weekend, the scrimmage, the inter-squad scrimmage that just happened yesterday in State College in Happy Valley. And 2 weeks ago, we had Andy Hofford on the show to talk about Penn State football in general.
Sorry.
And there were a couple things that we missed out on. We had comments that I just completely missed. I apologize for that. Let me see if I don't want to miss anything from anyone right now. Nope, we don't have any questions at the moment. So if anyone does have any questions, shoot them our way. But for now, we're going to go back in time 2 weeks and answer a couple questions that were there for us. The first is from my uncle, and he said, appreciate talk about the incoming talent at Penn State, but I would love to hear your thoughts about can James Franklin take us to that next level of getting to the playoffs, i.e. top 4 teams, not 8-team playoff. So he wants to know, can Penn State win the Big Ten and get one of those first-round buys? Not just make the college football playoff. That's going to be 12 teams after this year. Can James Franklin take Penn State to a Big Ten championship and a first-round bye in that expanded field?
Okay, so not just can he do it this year, but like in general.
In general,
like,
yeah.
So, like, okay. Yeah, you want me to go?
Yeah, go right.
Okay.
Dive right in.
Yeah, I think he can. There are legitimate like criticisms that you can have. And some of those have reared their head, like we've seen, come up at times. We've talked about them on the show, like struggling out of the bye, struggling after a setback, losing a heartbreaker to Ohio State, which is tough. Games we should have won, but then losing to Michigan State, who we should not lose to. Things like that have been frustrating. However, I think if you look at it big picture, I think Franklin puts Penn State in a really good position to continue to get better. I sent this to, I think I sent one to you this week, where it was a quote from the Franklin interviews. He had a bunch of interviews this week, and some of that he opened up about NIL. He's been as transparent, and I saw people talking about this, in some of these interviews as he's ever been. And I think some of that might be his comfort factor with Pat Kraft as the AD.
Right.
And if they're on the same page, James can say some more of those, and his contract situation, he can say some more of those things out loud. I know people complain about him, quote unquote, complaining about things, but that was what he needed to do. And NIL and those things are coming, you have to be a player in those games. I know people are like, oh, he can recruit, but listen, you have to be able to recruit. If you
not
can't,
1985,
right? If you can't recruit, you're not going to win. You might win all here and there, but you're not gonna compete to address this question. You're not going to compete for Big Ten championships regularly if you're not recruiting top. I want to say top 10, top 15, top 10 nationally every year. That's where you need to be.
Right.
And that's big business. Like it or not, that's kind of where that is right now. That being said, I think Franklin, in those regards, I think he's all those things that Penn State needs. Does that make sense? So, it's kind of crazy because, and again, we've talked about this a long time ago, and we don't need to talk about it a ton, but, Bill O'Brien was very good for Penn State at that time when he was there.
He was the perfect coach at the right time.
Right,
Right
and
place,
he
right
was
time.
he was everything they needed, on the field. He was that steadying force. He was a great on the field coach and all of that stuff. However, he made it clear from the start. So I don't blame him for this. He made it clear that he wanted to be an NFL coach from the start.
Right.
And so when he left for an NFL job, if he would have left for a college job, that would have really hurt. It hurt when he left for the NFL, but you can't blame the guy. He wants to be an NFL coach. But that being said, when he didn't really want to do any of that other college football coaching stuff. He didn't want to be in the meetings with boosters or, doing the interviews here and there, being the rah-rah guy. That's not him at all. And I don't mean to, belittle, Franklin's contributions, because that's selling it short, too. Look at it. Let's just look at his track record. Penn State over the last, there were 2 years, 2 seasons ago and 3 seasons ago, which were disappointing. One of those was a global pandemic, and
which was wacky.
And they lost their first game on a terrible call.
Terrible call, wrong call.
Oh,
flat out wrong.
And your best player sat out for the year because the Big Ten screwed it up.
Because Kevin Warren made his one and only mistake as commissioner.
Right. So there was a lot wrong that year, but when we look at it, so those 2 years aside, and I know that 2 years is a big thing, but they've won a Big Ten championship. That was a while ago now. But they've played in New Year's Six Bowls. They've been successful in New Year's Six Bowls. I think they're heading in the right track. And one of the things I said to you, and I think I said it to Andy and you 2 weeks ago, was last year was the necessary step from where we were 2 years ago.
Right.
They weren't going to a playoff last year. Yes, I would have loved it, but that wasn't, it was disappointing at the end, that they lost. They basically lost to the teams that were better than them and beat the teams that weren't.
Right.
And I know we get, a bunch of, well, when are we going to be better? And I think that's what we're building to. You got to stack these recruiting classes, and to do that, you got to invest in all that stuff.
That is definitely the one thing that I've seen written about a lot is stacking the recruiting classes, and that's how you become Georgia and Alabama, essentially.
Yeah.
And Penn State's getting that. Now, are they stacking top 5 classes? No, but they're stacking, top 15, top 12,
Right.
top
and
10.
you know what you do is then you need to be successful year after year. You need to get that next step, and then you start. Who knows where it goes?
Right. So, yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I do think James Franklin is the guy to take Penn State where they need to go. I know a lot was made out of him talking about becoming elite, and Penn State's not quite there yet. They're not a top 5 program. I would argue only Ohio State is in the Big Ten. I know Michigan's had a couple of successful years back to back, but that's a lot of what have you done for me lately when people start talking about how great Michigan is all of a sudden, because outside the last 2 years, Michigan is not what Michigan was in the 80s and 90s and maybe early 2000s. Like, they're just not. No one was scared of Michigan.
No.
It was Ohio State, and everyone was chasing them. I'm not sure that people aren't done chasing Ohio State. It seems absurd to think that way. Now, if Michigan does it for a third year, okay, now you're on something.
Right.
But is that when Harbaugh leaves? But we're not here to talk about Michigan and Ohio State. I definitely think Franklin's the guy. I don't like when people doubt his abilities. Are there shortcomings? Yes. Very few coaches are perfect.
Well, and like some of the things that people don't like, though, and I get that it's the on-field stuff, but like people complaining about the facilities and stuff. Who do you think we're gonna get that is gonna be like, oh yeah, I don't need any facilities upgrades. We don't need any booster money. We don't need any NIL money. Like,
right. Well, that's what I don't understand. People who are like. You can complain as though this is college football in the 70s and 80s, but you're just going to be left behind. You're going to lose. This is an arms race. College football is an arms race. It has been for decades now, and it's just changed the way it looked. It's different. Before, it was coaches. Now, like, modern is now NIL. It was then it was this spread off offense. Now it's NIL. Like, if you're caught sleeping, you're gonna get passed.
fumble return for a touchdown.
I just saw that. Excellent. Facilities and all that peripheral stuff, you can talk about how it should make sense. Only the stuff on the field matters, but the people that are playing on the field are the ones that are also concerned about the stuff off the field.
I think Audrey wrote about how they had to convince Danny Sutton to come to Penn State because they don't have like a player's dorm. Like he wasn't guaranteed a single room.
The
or something
defensive
like
end,
that. Yeah.
Denny Sutton, yeah,
right. Who
looks like a beast.
Yes.
After his his play yesterday in the blue-white game, Penn State could have the. I feel like they have the best defensive ends in the Big Ten. They could have the best defensive end room in the country if all plays out as we hope. And that would be incredible. I would love for that to be a thing, for Penn State to have just the trio of defensive ends they can trot out there with Isaac Robinson and Denny Sutton. Whew.
Right. And, we talked about this again a little bit 2 weeks ago. It's going to be interesting because you're going to need some young guys to step up. Because they did lose some key contributors who have been there for a while, but we also got some key guys back for that extra year. A lot of times we've had guys who have left what you and I would say maybe a year earlier than they should. A lot of key guys came back for that year, this coming year.
Yeah, so, shockingly so.
Right, and I don't know what that means for the future moving forward, because the next year could be a little tough because you could have extra number of guys leaving. But that's where it comes into that importance of stacking the recruiting classes. Because if you've got key guys behind them, so to look at that, they just got a top 100 recruit running back commit today.
Right, and that's after having the top PA running back commit for next recruiting class.
Right, so they already have but that's where it, and this is another key piece. You look at Penn State, and they're putting guys in the pros, right?
Oh,
and that's
huge.
Key. Because guys who were recruiting, most of them, their end goal is to play in the NFL.
Right. So you start putting guys at that position in the NFL, good things happen. I mean, we're seeing it now with defensive backs. Penn State's always been known for linebackers, and now they're getting
Right.
known for running
So
backs.
right, when you've got guys like Micah Parsons and Saquon Barkley and some of the tight ends, some of the tight ends that we've had that have just put up freak numbers at the combine and at those workouts lately, like that's all huge stuff.
That was an awful series. Really, really poor series by me there. Couldn't put it away. But, yes, Penn State, we saw when James Franklin came in January 2014 how it was just a different recruiting beast. He was high energy. He was able to sell the program. He was able to pull in guys that we weren't used to Penn State pulling in. And it's paid off, and it's gotten even better. So I just, it's hard for me to fathom that there's a huge contingent of people out there that don't think James Franklin can get the job done. And then my question to them, and
Yep.
Justin, you and I talk about
We
this
talk
all
about
the
this
time.
every year.
Okay, you don't think James Franklin's getting the job done or can get him into the elite category where you're always competing for Big Ten championships and getting into the college football playoff, or specifically getting one of those first-round buys.
Right.
Who are you going to get that
Right.
is going to take him to the next level?
And they don't have an answer to that, Joey.
Right.
And then the next thing becomes, well, so like, and I know this is ridiculous because it's terrible. I'm just using it as an example. But if they're like, well, they should go get somebody like Harbaugh, well, okay. I mean, I know Harbaugh's at Michigan and that's his school he went to and all that stuff. But okay, so you're not drawing a guy away from another big time Power 5 school, a top 5 school, right? Like, you're not pulling a guy away from there. And if you are, what kind of money and things are you going to have to throw at him? You're going to have to throw all those things that Franklin's saying they need.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Everything that you don't want to pay for, or you don't want to pay a coach more money or whatever, how can you say get rid of Franklin to bring in someone else? Also, that's not a slam dunk. How many times have programs? I mean, just look at Florida. How many coaches
Yes.
has Florida run through? Texas.
Yes.
These teams were top
Tennessee.
tier 10, 15 years ago. Like, we're talking Texas and Florida in the 2000s were dominant.
Yes.
And what have they done in the last 15 years?
Yep. Exactly.
It's the grass isn't always greener. And I know there's a lot of people, Paul Roberts, who have said Penn State fans settle for a 10-win season and a trip to the Rose Bowl. If you're giving me that like every second or third year, and you throw in a chip to the CFP, especially an expanded one, okay, I guess I'm settling for that.
Right,
Because there's only two, Alabama and Georgia. No one
Right.
else is on their level.
Right.
No one.
And again, to loop it around, Alabama and Georgia probably have, 2-3 times the resources that Penn State has in football in terms of boosters walking in and just writing checks. You know what I mean? You don't have access to that number, but I'm willing to bet that that's what it is. You know what I mean?
If you want to make money, you need to spend money. You want to
Yeah.
win games, you better be spending in every
Yeah.
aspect. And I know there's traditionalists that don't want to hear that, but I'm sorry, that's the way it is.
Right, exactly. And that doesn't mean you have to do it the same way as everyone
No, you
else.
could find a different way, sure.
Right. And to set yourself apart and to keep your university, and your team to the standards that you feel they should be, I have no problem with that. But, to say, oh, we're not going to do that, well, that's fine. Then we can go play in the Ivy League because they don't offer athletic scholarships. Right. And, hey, okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's me being facetious, obviously. But, you know what I mean? You can't have it both ways. You can't be oh, well, they should just be better. But
not give them any way
all the
to
things
do
that he's saying they need to do to be better, which every team that's better would say they have, consistently.
Right.
Okay, that's there. And I know people will be like, well, what about TCU? Yeah, TCU. Look, you know how they got
Flash
so
in the
many.
pan.
You know how many how they got all those transfers that helped with their thing this year, because they had boosters write NIL checks out the wazoo. And I know you're not allowed to recruit with NIL, but everybody knows how it works. That's just the way it is.
Drive where our lineman just decided not to block the blitzing linebacker. Yeah, so hopefully, Uncle Dennis, we answered your question. Sorry we didn't get to it 2 weeks ago. It just slipped by in the stream. in the chat. But my dad also had a question. This was also Penn State related, so we're gonna tackle that here. And it's one I think we have touched on in the past. Justin, I'm trying to pull it up on my phone. I took a screenshot of it because he had texted me during the stream. I only saw it when we finished with Andy. So he said, what are you guys thinking about USC and UCLA joining the league? One, I was all for it when it broke. What was it last summer? Yeah, last summer when it came out in like June 2022 that USC and UCLA were joining the Big Ten. I was all for it because it adds exposure to the Big Ten. It adds two marquee names, whether or not UCLA, you consider them a top-tier football program. No. Basketball, yes. But USC is, in most people's eyes, a top-tier college football program, top 10, top 15. They just stole Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma a little over a year ago. They have the defending Heisman Trophy winner and odds-on right now number one pick in the 2024 draft in Caleb Williams, who transferred out of Oklahoma to go play with Lincoln Riley at USC. If he can put together some form of a defense, that program's going to be very strong.
Don't bank on that with Lincoln Riley, though.
They are not joining the Big Ten until August 1st, 2024. Maybe it's July 1st. It's the summer of 2024. So we don't get that this year, but it's coming in 2024, which is the first year that there is an expanded college football playoff and it's going to feature 12 teams. It should open up avenues for recruiting for the Big Ten programs now that you have USC and UCLA in the conference. Teams that travel to play USC and UCLA, you're now being seen by the rich California recruiting territory. You're bringing in the media dollars. Kevin Warren's coup de grace, or the greatest thing that he did for the Big Ten, we saw at the end of last summer, early last fall, signing, some ridiculous $8 billion media rights deal.
Those teams are going to be getting roughly like 80 to 100 million a year, I think.
Just from media rights.
Right.
So people message all the great athletic college football writers we talk about all the time. Not Audrey, who's fantastic for Penn State, but like the national writers. Doctorman, who handles, I think, Big Ten, Iowa, and Big Ten in general. But Mandel and Feldman. Like, they all do these college football recruiting mailbags. People are always complaining, Maryland shouldn't have gone to the Big Ten. Rutgers shouldn't have gone to the Big Ten. Nebraska shouldn't have gone to the Big Ten. And then they basically are like, they wouldn't be getting half or less amount of money that they're getting now.
Oh, yeah.
But it's all about the money. It's not about the on-field results.
Maryland had to pay $40 million to the ACC to leave. They got that in their first year deal in the Big Ten. Their first year. The old deal was $40 million a year.
Yeah, now a decade later, it's more than doubled.
Right.
And
Maryland's athletic department in the whole, honestly, the things that they used to be outstanding in, like basketball and stuff, aren't necessarily there where they used to be. But, they're across the board, they're fairly strong, and that's because you have a healthy athletics budget because of the Big Ten deal.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. I think USC and UCLA joining is a slam dunk. I know there's logistical issues, but the money is too good for it to not work out.
You know what helps you figure out those problems? $90 million TV deal every year.
I also, I laugh about it. You think the student athletes are like, I can't believe I have to go to California for my match?
Right.
Get out of here.
Right.
No,
man.
You might think that you're doing someone a favor by being like, well, think about the travel and the lodging and the expenses and the jet lag and all this stuff. I mean, maybe none of that is appealing to the USC.
I'm just going to take the onside kick here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just so in case we don't get it, then I'll just be here.
But, okay, maybe for the student athletes at USC and UCLA, it doesn't make as good of sense, maybe. But, I mean, their athletic departments are now getting more money. That's what is the overriding factor for everything. But the other 14 Big Ten teams, all their student athletes outside of football that get to travel and play USC and UCLA in a lot of interesting sports.
Right.
That mean a lot in California, especially the Olympic competitions, those Olympic sports. Slam dunk.
Well, I already saw, they said with the money and stuff, could USC and UCLA, could they add hockey Like, could they add hockey teams?
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome.
Somebody said they don't think UCLA ever will. Well, no, I shouldn't say ever. They don't think they would, but they said they could see USC doing it.
Man, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Arizona State has a team.
Right.
That we're not talking about them. But.
Right. But, like, it's one of those where I was pleased, and I hope they add a couple more. It's the way it's going to go. They're going to form these few mega conferences.
There's going to be at most 3 mega conferences
right.
and everyone else.
Right. I know we continue to look out west, but honestly, I know it sounds crazy. But, like, don't overlook some of the ACC schools because the ACC's media deal is not that great. And
I see. The thing that prevents some, at least Penn State fantasies of getting some of our local teams in the Big Ten, I think, are generally the academic side of things.
No, yeah.
Because, like, how cool would it be to have, like, Virginia Tech join? I don't know, and this isn't me trashing Virginia Tech. I don't know if they meet that requirement, which, like, I believe every school that's in the Big Ten is a member of that.
Yes.
Well, I forget what it's called.
It's that elite club, certification thing.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So I don't know what the schools out there meet that criteria, because I know one of those mailbags on The Athletic, someone asked, like, should Missouri have joined the Big Ten? And they were like, the Big Ten didn't want Missouri.
Right. They wouldn't take them.
Meet the academic thresholds.
Right, and that's where, like, Nebraska, like, it sounds crazy, but Nebraska did, So, like, I say it sounds crazy. I don't mean that as a knock on Nebraska, but, like, Nebraska wasn't
you hear
just
that, Andy?
It wasn't just a random school. It was them. Yeah, and that's where, like, you know what? And again, looking beyond football, but even football at times, and hopefully again in the future, like teams like Stanford, like some of those schools would be fun to have.
Yeah, I think if you're into expanding the footprint outside of football and basketball, well, still, I mean, at least football, Stanford's had a few good years in the last decade. I know it's a little rough recently, but if the Big Ten expands beyond 16 and gets to, let's say, 20, the 4 schools that I would be most interested in that I believe is plausible without looking into the academic standing of some of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast schools: Stanford, Oregon. I know we talk about Washington State. That, I guess there's a possibilities, but I think Stanford, Oregon, Notre Dame, if anyone could ever convince them. I mean, the only logical place for them to go is the Big Ten. There's so many rivalries there that it's just a perfect fit. And we'll see if NBC wants to keep ponying up money just to broadcast their games. Something could eventually force them to join a conference. I feel like we've been saying that for 30 years.
And they can't get a bye now.
Right. So Stanford, Oregon, Notre Dame. See, we've seen schools split up between Washington and Washington State, or maybe Utah. I don't know what would be the. Are you in agreement that those 3 are the 3 of the big ones left out there?
I agree.
To add for academic prestige.
Yeah, I know.
Stanford brings a lot of the Olympic sports.
You could look at like Cal or Oregon State
Cal,
again.
yeah, you know what? I was forgetting about Cal.
Like.
I think Stanford, Cal, Oregon, and Notre Dame, I think that would be the 4. Washington State, Oregon State, Utah are probably in that next tier in terms of Pac-10, Pac-12 teams out there. I feel like it would be fun.
Like, selfishly, and doesn't necessarily make sense, but a team that I want Colorado because my sister lives like 25 minutes from campus.
And Deion Sanders is their head coach.
But like, it would be fun to go to Penn State at Colorado, and I have a place to stay. So, like, that would be incredible.
Right. So, that's where I'm at for that. It would be fun maybe for you and I to come up with our I've texted you about this a little bit, is to come up with our own conference.
Yes.
Like, if this was our opportunity to create and like a regionally specific conference, not like this is a conference where I have, Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State. Like, I'm not saying pick the best, 16 teams. I'm saying pick up, where it used to all be regionalized.
Right.
What would be, in terms of a Penn State-centric view of a conference? Paterno was proposing that in the late 80s before Penn State joined the Big Ten. What would be a Mid-Atlantic Northeast conference? What would it be cool to see? A regionalized conference from the eyes of Penn State. And I messaged that to you, I think, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
My ideas on that. But I would love to put it on paper and an image to splash up on the screen that we could show and just kind of talk through. And I wouldn't put any academic requirements on it. I would just say, what would make sense. I don't know that it would be realistic. I mean, obviously it's not realistic now. It's not actually going to happen. But if all things were equal and the way things were now were considered, I don't think it would have the TV panache because I would not be including Michigan and Ohio State most likely in that creation. One, they would never leave the Big Ten, but I don't know. It's a fun exercise. We've done something similar in the past where we reorganized the NFL.
Yeah, and then leave it to a couple years later. We see those articles that are basically very similar to some of the things we had said.
Right. You kind of have to draw a line with. You can preserve some rivalries. And we're going to see this in the Big Ten coming up with the addition of USC and UCLA, too. We're going to get a new scheduling format.
It's said by this summer. It's said by this summer.
Yeah, it should be happening very soon. So, I don't know. Well, Justin and I continue to trudge along. FAU still undefeated and ranked. We should still be ranked number one. We didn't drop, did we?
We are. No,
okay.
we're number one.
So you're going to get this
and
coin
we're playing
toss.
We're playing 1-8 Rice.
Oh, come on. We got to win this game. Can't lose this one. Hopefully we can plow through that. That game took a long time for some reason.
Yeah, I know. I realized that too. I was like, ooh.
I don't know why that game took so long, but yeah, so no other recent comments about anything. I mean, I hope we answered my uncle and my dad's question, Penn State specific. I think adding USC and UCLA is a no-brainer. I remember I was so excited last June when it came out that was probably going to be happening. Because why not? They're two marquee names in college athletics. You get one that's been historically really good at football and one that's been really good at basketball. Adding those two to the conference makes a lot of sense. It's tough for me to read things with a straight face of people trying to say that it's not a good idea.
Right. Especially when we just talked about the aspect of the money and how that's a reality and in terms of money, those were big gets.
Huge gets.
You got the TV market of Southern California. Man, can't ask for more.
All right, my dad's giving us a rare thumbs up, so he must agree that he's with us and we answered his question. I don't know if my uncle's listening. Hopefully he caught it, but Justin and I are very much on the Team Franklin camp. We have been all in on him since he was hired. He was the guy that I had focused in on after Bill O'Brien left for the Texans job. He was the one I wanted. He's the one we got, and I can't say I've been disappointed. Obviously, there's been some issues here and there, game to game. There's been some seasons that have been better than others. I don't really hold 2020 or 2021 against him all that much. One is the pandemic season. The other, you got absolutely obliterated with injuries in one game that turned the season around.
Yep.
In the wrong direction. And guess what? The team rebounded in a huge way the next year.
Yeah,
So,
they were not people picked them to win 8 games. We to go back to some of the things about, and I'm not saying Paul said this, but about Penn State, but what were they? They were over under was 8.5 wins last year or something like that in a lot of places.
Well, 11-2, right?
Yeah.
With a Rose Bowl win.
And to win the Rose Bowl, right.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I will take a Big Ten championship in 2016 where we got screwed out of playing in the playoff.
Because of the unequal divisions is the only reason Penn State hasn't been to the Big Ten championship more.
Right.
If Penn State was in the Big Ten West, they arguably would have been to or if Ohio State and Michigan were in the West and we were in the East, we arguably would have been to the Big Ten championship probably 2 or 3 more times easily.
Right.
So That's just kind of the way it is.
For many of the last, really probably since 2016, there's a case can be made more often than not that Penn State was the second best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But couldn't finish any higher than third. Just the way the schedule broke out,
Right.
and whatnot. So, yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, that math may not make sense now that I'm saying.
So maybe the realignment might help us out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but almost any of the past.
Or Penn State will continue to start their Big Ten schedule on the road every single year.
Yeah, well, I mean that's already happened for the last 11 years, so
something crazy,
something ridiculous like that. So I mean, we have the time, so I can just pull up these schedules and let's start with Penn State in 2016 because that year got off to a rough start. 2016 started very, very poorly. Whenever you lose to Pitt, things are not okay. Yeah. And I remember that was probably, honestly, the lowest point for me during the Franklin tenure.
What stunk in that spot was they were coming on strong, and young McSorley threw an ill-advised deep pass that he didn't need to throw because they were already like pushing field goal range, and that was it.
Yeah, so that 2016 started with a 33-13 win over Kent State, then went to Pitt the next week, lost 42-39 at Heinz Field. So that really, really sucked. Then beat Temple the next week by a touchdown before getting absolutely destroyed by number 4 Michigan, 49-10.
When we lost, 5 linebackers in that game too?
Yes. So that was awful. No one had a good time. But then the next week was that overtime win against Minnesota, 29-26, which turned the season around.
Yeah.
Because
not a strong start for us against Rice, by the way.
Then Penn State went out and beat Maryland 38-14 before shocking Ohio State in a game that I turned off and went to bed because I was so frustrated.
That was.
Which you couldn't do because you were there.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was so much fun. That was one of the most fun games because, like, they're just hanging around.
Well, and since I know my dad's listening, he tells everyone that he called me and woke me up because he knew that I was mad.
Right.
And I went to bed. I was frustrated. I was like, we're just going to lose to Ohio State again. And he called me, and I got to watch the rest of that game. He's like, they're going to do it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Then they were able to go to beat Purdue the next week 62-24. They beat Iowa, which we love to do, at Indiana, at Rutgers, Michigan State, and then finally Big Ten Championship went to Wisconsin, which my dad was at.
That's awesome.
So, and then unfortunately that shootout of a Rose Bowl, I was pretty mad during that game too because it's like, how can we not stop?
Right, and I
Sam Darnold.
Well, and I said this over and over, like, for a few years, not for a couple years, but like I love Brent Pry and we had good defenses, but like in our biggest games, at biggest moments, the defense disappeared at times. The Ohio State game, I think the next year, 2017.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
Like, the Rose Bowl, and specifically, defense disappeared. Well, we scored. What was the score of the Rose Bowl? Do you have it up still?
52-49.
Right, we scored 49 points and lost the Rose Bowl. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Oh my gosh! Did you just see that block?
Yes.
What? Wow, ridiculous.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, 2016 though ended up. Imagine what could have been if they beat Pitt.
Right.
I mean, they would have been in the playoff. Now I know that's revisionist history. You don't know that the rest of the season. Maybe they wouldn't have beat Ohio State. But if you flip that one game and Penn State beats Pitt.
Well, then it becomes really interesting because, like, they were able to write off Penn State because of the 2 losses and the blowout loss to Michigan. But if the only loss is the blowout loss to Michigan, you know what I mean? Like, that becomes really interesting. What do you do?
So fast forward to 2017 now, and there was so much coming back. There were so many high expectations. They started the season ranked 6th. And got all the way up to number 2 when they beat Michigan 42-13,
which was
setting up that huge
so
showdown
much
with
fun.
Ohio State.
That game was so much fun.
The Michigan game.
Yes.
So they had to go to Ohio to play Ohio State, and I believe they had a lead in the fourth quarter before, and actually a double-digit lead
Yes.
in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
And before losing 39.
And they got super conservative on offense, and the defense couldn't get a stop.
Couldn't stop anyone.
Right. What was the score you said?
39-38.
Right. You scored 38 points in the horseshoe. And so I know the offense didn't do a whole lot in the second. You scored 38 points in the horseshoe. You've got to win that game.
And then the one that bothers me more than that is the next week at Michigan State. Was this the rain one?
That was the 4-hour rain delay. Yep.
So they're ranked number 7. They're at number 24, Michigan State. There's a huge rain delay that pushes things out of whack, but they lose this game 27-24.
Yep.
And that one was, to me, worse than the Ohio State.
No, absolutely. Because while we should have beat Ohio State, it's hard to argue that we were better than Ohio State. I mean, if you win, you can make that argument, but we didn't win, whatever. I'm still not convinced we weren't better than that Michigan State team. That Michigan State team wasn't that good.
No. So then Penn State rips off wins against Rutgers, Nebraska, at Maryland, and finally a Fiesta Bowl win against Washington.
Right. Right.
It's just it's so frustrating because it's one of those what could have been.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Throw the ball to him. So 2016 still felt, even with the Rose Bowl loss and the loss to Pitt earlier in the year, I still was happy with 2016. 2017 I was not, because I felt like we blew our chance at Ohio State.
Yep.
A game we should have won, and then we had no business losing to that Michigan State game.
Right.
But high expectations.
Right.
We finished the season 12-2 with a Fiesta Bowl win, and I'm mad about it.
Right, exactly.
So I'll take that. But then 2018 rolls around, we're like, there's a little bit of a reloading here. But again, they got hit with this mid-season slump after choking up a lead to Ohio State, a second straight 1-point loss to the Buckeyes. And I think that's where a lot of people got on the James Franklin elite thing that had been mentioned previously. Is they're like, well, are you ever going to be able to beat them? You did it once, great job. You got to be able to do it multiple times and consistently. So they started 4-0. They squeaked by in the season opener with an OT win against Appalachian State. They destroyed Pittsburgh and Kent State and Illinois before losing by a point to Ohio State at Beaver Stadium, no less. And then the next week, you host an unranked Michigan State team and lose to them 21-17.
Yep.
So you were at both those games, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was infuriating. Again, the Ohio State one was infuriating because you had a shot, but I didn't feel like we were better that year. But then you look at that Michigan State one, oh my gosh, that was so bad.
Yeah, that one ranks up there with the worst.
So
of the
there's
Franklin
also,
era.
I can distinctly remember in that game, there was a moment where we were up, but they were coming on strong, and there's a drive, and we hit the quarterback, right? And let's just, I don't know what yard line it was, but let's just say Michigan State's at their own 35, right? We hit the quarterback at the 30, and he's in his throwing motion, but the ball goes out of bounds at the 25, okay? And again, I'm making up those numbers as to just prove the point. So the ball went backwards on his throw, right? And they were like, well, no, it wasn't a fumble because it was a throwing motion. Yes, but it went backwards.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether he threw it overhand or underhand or whatever. It was a throwing motion. Or it went backwards. You know what I mean? And it wasn't deflected backwards. It just straight up, he threw it backwards. And they're like, no, it was throwing motion, so it's incomplete. So, and I think it was it might have been a third down or something. So instead of, there we go.
Go, 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 go. Go, Lester. Yeah.
So instead of it being, instead of getting them in a third and long or fourth and long or something, they end up converting on the next play. And it was just one of those things where you're like, I think they got that wrong. I don't, and if not, that's a stupid rule.
So are you saying we should have an episode dedicated to Big Ten referees?
Oh gosh, I'm sure it was John O'Neill.
Oh, there he would be on there. He would be all of the top 5.
Making up where the goal line is at Nebraska.
Oh, yeah,
gosh.
let's relive those memories.
Yeah. Our replay just isn't working for other things, like when the ball bounces off the ground. Oh, man, this took a downhill turn. Really
Yeah,
quick.
now we're just here. Let's relive some more. So in the 2018 season, after those back-to-back losses, Penn State beats Indiana and Iowa before getting obliterated once again in Ann Arbor by Michigan. I remember this one happened, I believe, on the baby shower for my sister for when she was having Logan, because I just remember like being like, "That's it, turn it off."
This is the worst day.
This is the worst day of my life. Now they won the next 3 weeks. They beat Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Maryland, and then they lost to Kentucky, which in the Citrus Bowl,
Right.
which was disappointing. But like I think a bunch of guys had been injured, or they
and a
opted
bunch of guys
out
were opting
and
out
didn't play.
Yep.
So that was frustrating because I didn't. Much like we'll see in a
Benny
few years
Snell
from now
tore us apart in that game.
against Arkansas, I feel like we could have easily hung with Kentucky more than we showed. So that was a disappointment because no matter the bowl, you still want to end the season on a
Yes.
high note. It can sometimes be a catapult for the next season. And 2019 turned out to be a really good season. I mean, the team climbed up as high as number 4 with big wins against Idaho, Buffalo, squeaked by Pittsburgh. Still won, but should have beat them by more. Destroyed Maryland. That was at the Friday night game.
I think it was
59-0. Same thing. Beat up on Purdue. The thriller at Kinnick was that Jawan Johnson that year.
Yes.
Was that
Yes.
17-12 last second touchdown catch in Iowa, which just, I mean, outside of Ohio State and Michigan, I probably hate Iowa the most next. I can't even count Maryland and Rutgers. They just are always going to be most hated. But in terms of good teams, because Maryland and Rutgers suck. So does Temple. So does Pitt. I'm just going to air my grievances right now for anyone and everyone. Iowa's right there next, and that's what happened in 2021 with how ridiculous they were, their fans and their coaching staff, about what they think Penn Staters were faking injuries.
A lot of those same fans didn't have that same energy with Spencer Lee. Funny how that happened.
But then beat Michigan 28-21. College game day was there, so Penn State beat number 7, beat number 16 Michigan.
Oh my gosh.
Able to get a win at Michigan State. I think everyone was really concerned about that game. Well, it was the week after that sucked the most. November 9th at Minnesota, losing 31-26. The defense looked awful that day.
It was, but they also got called for pass interference or there wasn't pass interference called on Minnesota when they tackled the guy before the ball was there.
But Penn State got a win at Indiana the next week, or against Indiana the next week, before having a showdown with number 2 Ohio State in Ohio, and just couldn't. I mean, they hung around but couldn't do enough. Lost 28-17. Finished the season with a win at Rutgers, and then got to go to the Cotton Bowl and beat number 17 Memphis 53-39.
Yeah, and again, it was kind of shaping up to, we had some young guys who were really kind of starting to step up there. Second part of that season, it was going to be interesting to see how it kind of went forward, and then it got crazy in a hurry.
Yeah, things got crazy. So I hope everyone's enjoying this Penn State retrospective we're going on here as we try to fill airtime with the segment that I know my dad and Uncle Rich love, was us playing college football. But, oh gosh, he just got leveled. But then we get to 2020. There wasn't going to be a season. Then there was an abbreviated season. You had people opting out.
Right.
And you already mentioned earlier this show, Justin, Penn State season got off to a rough start in Bloomington against Indiana.
Right.
An upstart Indiana team.
Right.
And they got one of the worst Big Ten, we're talking about Big Ten refs.
Yes.
One of the worst calls I've ever seen
Right.
is still that overtime 2-point play.
Right.
Because the physics of the situation don't work.
Right.
If you have half a brain,
You should be
Right.
able to
And
understand
it's
that,
not
that the
it's
ball
not
was
e-
down.
right. It's not even a well. You can't see the ball. It's not like one of those scrums in the you see where it's like, well, we couldn't see the ball.
Oh my
where,
gosh!
So
No
it's
way.
not that. And so yeah, that was just awful. That was really really bad.
Yes, that was awful.
And again, that was the day of birthday party for my son. So it was just wonderful. Now,
Yeah.
thankfully, the party had ended before.
Well, that was
ended,
one of
but-
those. That was a situation that led to me. We had this discussion with Andy 2 weeks ago. We had it a few weeks back just between us about not overreacting to our sports teams doing something stupid.
Right.
And that Penn State won in 2020 against Indiana because obviously Penn State could have played better to not have themselves in that situation.
100%.
But it's those things that are like out of Penn State's hand, out of the players and coaches' hands, that drive me absolutely nuts.
So it's also one of those things where, like, I hesitate to be like, oh, the refs cost you a game. Because, like you said, there were a million things Penn State could have done 100% better than they
Like
did that
not
game.
give up a touchdown in the final 60 seconds.
Right. However, I took a timeout to try and get it back here.
All right.
But it doesn't like you can also you can say that, and then you can also say the refs blew that call, which cost them 2 points, and they lost by 1. It would have ended the game.
Right, it was literally the final play of
Right.
the
So
game.
like a call can cost you the game with you also playing poorly. Both things can be true.
Right.
And that's how I feel about that. And again, they should have played much better. They did not.
Well, I mean, I remember just punching the ground, being
Yeah.
so angry, yelling, leaving the room for 5 minutes, and composing myself and just moving on because we were still in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
So like there was
Right.
not a lot of great stuff happening at all.
Right. Nice. It's awesome. You told him he needs to throw it. When he does, it works out well.
Yeah. So
The next week,
yeah, and then
they
it was Maryland,
lost.
right?
No, they lost to Ohio State.
Oh, was that week 2?
At home, and they lost by 13. It was not that close. They were getting the doors blown off of them. That's just kind of the way it went.
Do you want me to try to get to halftime and then start the second half?
Yeah, that's fine. The next week, they lost to Maryland by 16.
They looked awful in that game.
Maryland just ran the same play over and over and over again, and we couldn't stop it. And then they lost to Nebraska 23-30. They showed some life in that game. They did not play well, but they showed some life. And you're like, oh, maybe they're starting to crawl out of it, even though they're 0-4 at that point. Then they get the doors blown off them by Iowa, 41-21. And you're like, well, maybe they weren't showing life.
No, and then they win 4 in a row.
Yeah, so they're 0-5, and then they beat Michigan 27-17. They beat Rutgers 23-7. It was ugly, but it was a win. They beat Michigan State 39-24, and they beat Illinois 56-21. So like
No, come on.
it was bad, but like at the same time, you're just like, okay, like they got some positive momentum there. Based on the things like that had happened that season, you're like, oh man, they've got this really set up for the next year.
Well, and it went that way. Though
What's
they
that?
opted out of a bowl too. They could have gone to a bowl.
Right. They had qualified for a bowl based on the pandemic qualifications, and they just voted to end it. And again, there were a lot of deeper things there too. Like Franklin had to live away from his family.
He didn't see his family
because of his daughter having
sickle cell.
Sickle cell and being, he had to be extra careful around her and just all those things. Yeah, just oh my gosh, like it's just absolutely crazy.
So
how
like
that
I
kinda
give that
played out.
season a pass.
Yeah,
for
oh yeah.
everyone.
Nope.
For anything.
Absolutely. What the heck?
2021 though was like the opposite. Like so 2020 started awful and ended okay.
Right.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh.
so we go 2021.
Started awesome. What were they 6-0?
Right. So they start at Wisconsin, right? And they get that close game where they got the pick to seal it. Like awesome. Great start. Then Yeah. I had to make sure because I'm like, wait, is that right? And then they beat the doors off Ball State at the home opener. Beat Auburn, ranked Auburn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
They beat Auburn that was a fun one. That was just a cool game, and they were able to have some success there and beat them. They beat Villanova, not beat the doors off them.
That was a
but,
rough game.
Right. But then they beat Indiana in a revenge game, 24-0. Again, it wasn't great, but they won 24-0. We were kind of both hoping for more like 48-0. But hey, you post a shutout in the Big Ten. That's a positive thing.
We'll take it. Especially because Indiana had been trending up.
But then the wheels fell off on October 9th.
Yeah, well, at Iowa.
They're on their way to a blowout win against Iowa.
Yeah.
In Iowa City.
They were up 17-0?
I'm not exactly. I think it was maybe going to be. It was like 17-7, but they were driving for another score. Like they were driving.
And Clifford got drilled in the.
And Clifford got drilled in the ribs, and the team was never the same. So they lose to Iowa 20-23. Still should have won that game, but
still could have won that
right.
game.
Again, there are lots of things that happen.
Well, see, and that's another one that people put on Franklin and the staff, not having someone ready to go.
Right. Yeah.
That's just rough with the transfer portal kind of becoming a thing.
Right.
Relatively.
And the pandemic season the year before, so you didn't get the games where you would have put the guy in. What are you supposed to do? And there were also a ton of other injuries in that game, like you said. PJ Mustapher went out
for the season.
Right. Like all kinds of stuff.
He was faking though. He was the one that he always faking.
Yeah.
Yeah. He tore his ACL. He was faking a torn ACL.
But
oh my god.
But like we said, that loss was no fun, right? No fun.
No, that was awful.
Okay. The problem is
you let it linger.
You had a bye, and they came out of the bye and they lose to Illinois
in like 9 overtimes.
At home in 9 overtimes.
That was another one of those where I just threw my hands up in the air. I was like, I can't let this impact the rest of my.
And then they go and play Ohio State respectable, but lose by 9. So now they've lost 3 in a row.
Right. They were 6-0.
They rebound and beat Maryland, which was fun.
Always good to beat them.
Then they lose to Michigan by 4 in a game they should have won. They played terrible. They finished by beating Rutgers 28-0, and then they lose to Michigan State 27-30.
See, yeah, that's the
right. And it was just such a downer of a year. Such a downer of a year. And that leads us to last year, and we've talked about last year, and
right. Well, and then also
much better.
There was not a single part of me that was like, I don't want Sean Clifford back.
No.
Like, I know there were a lot of people that thought he needed to move on.
Right.
After 5 years with the team already, and he shouldn't take that 6th year of eligibility. But man, I think about how special last year was. I'm super glad that he took that 6th year of eligibility, but both for him personally and for the team.
Yeah, because as special as I think Drew Aller can be, and I hope he is, right? Like,
oh yeah, oops, I didn't transition the game over.
But at the same time,
missed all my good runs there.
That team does not do the things they did this past year if Clifford's not the quarterback.
Right.
And I know that again, that's another one of those flashpoints for Penn State fans, but in my opinion, that's I guess that's an oxymoron. In my opinion, that's the truth.
We'll go with it. We'll go with it.
I want to get that. I want to get that on a shirt. In my opinion, that's the truth.
In my opinion, that's the truth. No, that's going to be taken by way too many people that we don't want that to be taken.
Yeah, we're gonna take a hard left now and steer away from those discussions on the show, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. We've mentioned this. I'm optimistic about Penn State this year. I don't know that they're a top 4 team in the country. I'd love to see them compete for to be in that top 2 of the Big Ten, like legitimately. Like they've got Michigan at Penn State this year, correct?
Yeah. You want to make some noise? You beat Michigan.
Right.
You got to go to Ohio State though.
Right. But like.
See, but
they have Michigan at Penn State, so I give us a chance. Like I give us a chance when we play at home.
Right, but it just seems for some reason Penn State struggles more with Michigan, even though Ohio State is the better team. Penn State just has Ohio State's
It's that
number. And I
matchup.
don't-
It's that matchup, man.
I
It's
don't
a
mean-
bad matchup. We have the better matchup to compete with Ohio State than we do Michigan in terms of that just straight up bully run it right at you, which is where we're going to need the D line to be good. But you know where we have to make it like pay is we need to be able to do what when we're on offense, we need to dictate what we want to do, and we weren't able to do that last year. But you hope the offensive line kind of comes together.
You see that like top 100 recruit from Georgia is in the transfer portal.
Oh man.
Now, I feel like the odds of him coming to Penn State are small, but if he's looking for playing time, Penn State can give it to him because defensive tackle is one of the places they're looking for upgrade, just
Right.
more bodies, especially
Well, man,
more bigger bodies.
Again, and I know you got to make that call, right? If you're Penn State, because
yeah.
you got to, like, he's probably not leaving there to come up north. But, like, if he does, like, man, like, look,
What a
man, look at
huge-
these D linemen we've been putting in the pros. You know, like, look at these guys.
Yeah,
You can come here.
Come and be the thing that puts us over the top,
Right.
both at the position and as a defense as a whole.
Right.
So yeah, it could be interesting. But yeah, I saw that just posted the other day. So
It'll be interesting. But, nice move. Yeah, so we'll see. It's exciting. Spring ball just concluded for Penn State.
yeah, did you hear much from Blue and White? I mean, I know it's
No,
tough
they,
to take.
they
things
said it
from,
wasn't much.
but I read Audrey's recap.
Right, but the biggest thing I took away was Franklin said we came out with no more injuries
No
than we went
injuries,
into
yeah,
like
yeah.
the thing, which is exactly what you
Thankfully.
want, right?
Yeah, that's what you want for sure.
And that's been an issue the last few years for Penn State too. So, we'll see. They got a couple more commitments this weekend, including local boy Caleb
Yep.
Brewer.
So another Y missing
Hey.
player, Caleb Brewer, joining.
My immediate thought was awesome. My second thought was we're speaking into existence that we get Audrey to come down here to do
Yes, there you go.
a
Yeah,
show
'cause
or
not
an
only-
article on why missing
So
and
Javen Williams, Caleb Brewer,
why
Joey
missing in
Schlaffer,
Berks County. We're not
Uh,
just focusing there, but
well,
why
and
missing?
Trace Brown from Berks
Right.
Catholic.
Yes.
4 Berks kids up there as young players or
Right.
going up there soon. Yeah. So maybe we will be able to get Audrey on the show. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
She would be an awesome get for a show to interview.
I think I sent this to you last week. At our like family Easter gathering, there's like a game where there's like a jar full of like jelly beans, and
yes,
you guess how many
did.
are in there, and I guessed 409, and I won. It was 416. It was not 409, but it was 416. But
You
it's
were
the
closest.
closest without going over, and I was the closest. Yes.
You love to see it.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. That was a good get. That was a good text to get. I enjoyed that immensely. So, we're wrapping up here. We're in the fourth quarter of this game, so we're gonna hop off here real soon. Just trying to run the clock so we can get out of here. But it was fun talking Phillies baseball and Penn State football. And I guess we can finish this out by just looking ahead to 2023 and just look at the games. And we kind of talked about this 2 weeks ago with
Yeah.
Andy, and I know you and I have talked about it many times. I've talked about it with my dad a bunch. What are our expectations from this
Okay.
team?
So
And I just kind of want to look at it game by game and win, loss.
Here we go.
Like underrated
I
team to watch. However you want to frame it.
I think the first game is a big one. West Virginia. I don't think it's going to be the cakewalk that I would honestly. I know people hate those, but you don't get a scrimmage. You don't get preseason games in NFL or in college like you do in the NFL. So I think that's going to be a bit of a test, but I think Penn State should. I know Penn State should beat West Virginia, but you have a freshman quarterback, man.
Right.
Well, not really. You have a sophomore quarterback.
Who hasn't started a game yet, has played in some games and played
Right.
in a meaningful game at the beginning of the year last year
Yeah.
when Clifford went out with an injury. But
And held his own.
Yeah. But, from all reports from Blue and White, he looked like a guy who hadn't played in a lot of games. Now, there's not a lot of playbook happening. You're playing against guys that know you really well. So I honestly don't think it's anything to panic about because he rebounded after an ugly early start to look pretty good overall. But while they have the running backs and looks to be a line together again, the wide receivers are a question mark.
Yeah.
So they're hoping Keandre Lambert-Smith is the guy with Harrison Wallace. Apparently Amari Evans has looked pretty good.
Yeah, he got a big day yesterday.
He got reamed out. I guess he had a little too much of a celebration after his 28-yard touchdown toss from Allard to him. And he had to do, I think, up downs as a result. I think it was just to teach him you can't showboat at all. Because I don't even think what he did was that awful that would have guaranteed a flag. But apparently Franklin and the staff don't want anything about that. And apparently some of the player leaders, too, player captains got in his face, too, to tell him.
And that's one of those where I know there were some people who were like, oh, like, whatever, all this stuff. And I'm like, you don't know, like, what's been said or what happened. Like, you don't know. That may have been something they've talked about.
And to his credit, he owned up to it and was like, I guess I'll never do that again. And that's exactly what you want to hear. I don't want you to do it again. If there's a chance that you could get flagged for it, don't put your team in a bind.
Right.
For showboating or celebrating. Act like you. That's the one thing I always hear coaches say and I always respect. Act like you've been there before. Like, it's fine to be excited, but you don't have to do something that can be considered taunting or showing up the opponent. Just be excited. You can be excited without looking like a diva.
Right. Well, and as we've said earlier, don't leave anything in doubt when dealing with the Big Ten officials.
Right. Don't let the refs...
Or SEC officials who make you punt on third down. So there's always that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that.
Or call intentional grounding on a ball that, like, oh my gosh, they were terrible.
Here we go. We're going. This is our Big Ten ref episode. Now, we'll be here for another 2 hours. We're trying to wrap things up. So, yeah, the West Virginia start will be interesting.
But a game we have to win, right? I mean,
without a doubt.
Right. So you need to win that game. All right. So then you host Delaware the next weekend. You need to win that. I'll be careful in saying that, as I took my son to see Delaware take on Navy last year, and Delaware, the Blue Hens won. But it's not like they were playing Army or anything like that.
Gosh.
So you got to win that one. Then you have to go to Illinois. No slouch.
Opening Big Ten on the road.
Right. Yep. Opening Big Ten on the road. Bielema's there, so they're going to be.
They were good last year. They were sneaky good last year.
Yes.
Had a great defense.
Yes, the defense was very good. So like your first road game and the Big Ten opener is on the road at Illinois. That with a first-year starting quarterback.
Well, and honestly, it could be a trap game because the next week you are hosting Iowa.
You are home against Iowa.
Who I think they want to just obliterate.
I agree. And I think that's going to be the whiteout game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Because of the time of year. Because the Michigan game is in November, I believe, so it can't be a night game. It's going to be interesting because that's going to change, I imagine, with the new media deal, though, wouldn't it?
What's that?
That you can't have the night games in November because NBC or one of those games. I thought that was the whole way the CBS, Fox, NBC deal is that they'll each get like games on a Saturday, like
that's something that won't come into effect until 2024, right? Though, because isn't there a tiered approach in 2023 because there was so much
in
the air? Like,
well, I don't know because I don't think so because when the Big Ten tournament went, I guess when the games ended, like they're like, well, that's the last ESPN broadcast for a Big Ten game or something like that, like for a basketball game. So I don't know how that's going to come into play, but you know what I'm referring to, right? Like how you used to not be able to have that play there, but that should. So anyway, I still think Iowa may be the whiteout game. Then you go to Northwestern. They've been down a little bit. I know they had a good year just a couple years ago, but you need to win that one. But those trips to the Midwest, snowy Saturday game, I know that's September, but like it's, I don't like that. Then you have the bye, and then you come with UMass after the bye, and that's homecoming. And I'm glad we did that. I know people are upset. That's not a bigger game. I don't care. This is about winning. I want Penn State to win. They should beat UMass. Coming off the bye, which has been bad for us the last few years. So let's see it. So I don't know. Illinois is a game, and this is the perfect example. People are going to be like, it's Illinois. They're terrible. Well, yeah, you didn't. How many Illinois games did you watch last year? None? Right. And they were good.
0.
Right. They almost won the bad Big Ten West, but like Bielema is building there. You know they'll have huge guys on both lines.
Right. Oh, yeah. You know that for sure.
So, yeah. Then you have, after that UMass game, you're at Ohio State. Then you have Indiana, at Maryland. You host Michigan. You host Rutgers. And then you end at Michigan State.
There you go.
So it's going to be...
I would like to repeat of last year. Though if they're going to lose 2 games, I would prefer them to be to Michigan and Ohio State because I don't want them to beat one of them and then lose to a team they shouldn't have lost
Right,
it.
exactly.
It's better to lose to the good teams than the bad teams because that's so much more frustrating.
Right.
Because if they lose to someone like Maryland or Rutgers or Michigan State...
If they lose to Illinois. But beat Michigan at home, but lose to Ohio State close on the road, like you're left thinking, well, if we would have, if we hadn't lost Illinois, we would have a chance at the playoff.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm excited for Penn State football. I love the fall.
Yeah.
Wilson, Penn State, NFL, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Can't beat it. Gonna be awesome. Excited for it to get. Hey, it's already mid-April. Believe it or not, we're gonna start our NFL preview in a month. So all kinds of great things are happening. So we appreciate you joining us. Sorry it went a little bit long again. I'm not sure what took us so long, but
That first game was
it was a trud. But hey, we're undefeated. We're working towards our own national championship.
Can't rush perfection.
Exactly. So, but that's it for us this week. Justin, do you have any shout outs before we gotta get out of here?
Not that I know of off the top of my head. No. Oh, my Austin's birthday is this week.
Oh yes. Happy early birthday to Austin, celebrating in just a few days. And I apologize if Jack celebrated about a week ago, right before Easter. So did my cousin Matt. So happy belated to both of them. I apologize if there's someone that I'm forgetting in the family friend inner circle. Apologies. Oh, tomorrow's Val's birthday.
Oh yeah.
Happy birthday, Val. So there you go. We got it done. So that's it for Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, episode 377. We will be back next week at this time, 8:30 on April 23rd, episode 378. Don't know what we're talking about. We'll figure something out.
The problem for future Joe.
But we got 2 more games of NCAA Football 14 to play. But until next time, for Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time,